Donnie Simpson. I'm glad you could join me tonight. This is a very special night indeed. Tonight we are at the home of the legendary singer, songwriter, producer, musician. Oh, I don't even know what else to call him. He's preacher, that would be a good start. The one and only Curtis Mayfield. I mean, we have talked about you so many times on the Video Soul with other artists. And to finally get the chance to talk about you or to talk with you is very special for me tonight. So welcome to BET.
We're very pleased to have you, Donnie, and welcome to Atlanta.
Well, thank you. Hot Atlanta. Very hot outside, by the way, I might point out. About 95 today. But it was very nice of you to invite us into your home. And a lot of love in your home, too. You have 6 kids living here with you, 6
That's
out of
right.
11.
That's right.
Now, what ages are they now?
12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 18.
Almost one a year. What happened to 17? But a lot of love and a very warm house. And again, we thank you for inviting us in. I want to go back to the beginning. Actually, I originally thought we would start at the beginning of your career with the Impressions. But, you know, I'm kind of curious to know how you grew up as a child, too.
Well, as a kid, of course, there were 6 of us, and we lived with my mother. There was one retarded kid and a couple of sisters, and I had a brother. One of them died early with my mother, but I lived all over Chicago. I went to about 9 grammar schools.
Really?
And one of my final stops was in Caprini Green. However, at home there was a lot of love as well. I had 4 grandmothers all living at the same time, one of them being Reverend Annabelle Mayfield, who was a minister. And I think she and my mother probably had a great deal to do as to what I was to become later on in life. While I slept of many sermons, I think I sort of picked up the touch of being at the pulpit and being able to speak on words of inspiration. My mother was about Paul Laurence Dunbar, and she loved the limericks, which I learned early. And of course, we all knew Dr. Seuss, things of that sort. I think that somewhat prepared me for being able to lock in the lyrics and hook lines and things of that sort. I sang gospel. We were known as the Northern Jubilees when I was about 8 years old. Jerry Butler was one of us. And of course, we did that for a few years, and it sort of laid foundation as to my harmonies. And I think my preparation was laid out quite well as a youngster. I found myself very early in life, and I knew when I was about 12 years old what I wanted to do. So I began to follow the Yellow Brick Road.
Who were the hot groups then when you were just thinking about the Impressions or thinking about your career?
Oh, wow. Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, Delector Clark, who eventually, and the Cool Gents, who became D. Clark, if you can recall him way back. Peace of Mind, you gave me Peace of Mind. Pookie, Hudson and the Spaniels, and the Dells were about, and people of that sort.
Was it your desire to be in a group, or did you know even before joining the Impressions and while you were in the Impressions that you would eventually be a solo artist?
I never had any idea I'd become a solo artist. That was just something that seemed to sort of come about in my latter years. I was always with the group very happy and pleased to be one of the Impressions. However, I was fortunate enough to have them, after terminating our contract with ABC Paramount, they joined me in starting my own label known as Curtum. And after a few years, I was wearing so many hats, I thought that maybe it might be a good idea to stay home and try and run a company. However, it never happened. We ended up bringing a gentleman in by the name of Leroy Hudson to replace myself. And I found that I couldn't stop singing. And there originated the first album as a solo artist was Curtis. So it became a blessing in disguise. I ended up with 2 artists with Curtum rather than 1.
Right. So you actually left the Impressions to run the record company. I mean, you wanted to focus on the business end of it.
Well, I was in love and my admiration for Berry Gordy and Motown Records and what those guys were doing up there. I wanted to be about that. But I wanted to be about everything, I guess. Playing my guitar and singing with the group, and it was important to own as much of yourself as possible. So I was about trying to be with the business too. And it sort of got ahead of me, I guess. But I managed to be a little bit of all of it.
Now, you talked about the fact that you tried to focus more on the business end of it at one point. And I mean, obviously, you did that all the time, but for a while you tried to do just that. We've all read and heard stories about artists, especially during that era, and it's still happening today, that really didn't take care of business. They were in the music business, but not really about the music business. Did you witness a lot of cases like that yourself?
Well, coming up, I sort of believe, or like to think that I came in on the cusp when the Clyde McFadders and Ruth Browns, the Coasters, a lot of the old-timers were still happening in the business. And of course, we were the little young breed coming in speaking around 1958, when I turned professional at 14. And so I heard many, many stories of a lot of the old-timers, and even those up to date. No money. I mean, what's the average longevity of an artist? It's not too long. I mean, it seems like you get a lot of fame, but the name of the game is fortune and fame. And you must lock into it in a business sense. And I suppose it wasn't that I had all that knowledge, but my upbringing, possibly my own insecurities, made me want to own as much of myself as possible.
Just move on up to a greater day. With just a little faith, if you put your mind to it, you can surely do it. Keep on pushing. I've got to keep on pushing. I can't stop now.
I was writing songs left and right. I slept with my guitar.
Did you, literally?
Oh, literally, I did. And I mean, every little feeling, every little observance, every little thought was a song. Every conversation was a song. So it was important for me to find out about copyrights and publishing, and so I could make my own personal dealings. They didn't like it, but so what? We had to, we had to work something out. And that's important.
And I would assume that, I mean, here it is now. You started in 1958. All these years later, you've gotten yourself in a position where you can still make money because of these songs that you wrote 25, 30 years ago.
I'm thankful that I can still collect on songs I've written 30 years ago. And of course, that's important under my personal crisis and conditions. And you keep your dreams and you own as much of yourself as possible. Everybody pays dues. Sometimes you got to buy yourself back. And if you believe in yourself, and I found early that investment in myself was the best move. And obviously it has paid off thus far.
So when some of the younger people now sample your music, are you happy about that just because you get paid, or is it because the way they use the music, or does it bother you sometimes?
Oh, no, it's more, I'm very pleased with it, but it has nothing to do with the money. Of course, I appreciate the money and having the credits, but just the idea, I mean, we're talking maybe 1, 2 generations. And here these young kids are still about Curtis. And of course, I'm very flattered.
That's got to make you feel wonderful, though, Curtis. I mean, I know how it makes me feel when I play some of your music on radio in particular. And you see some 17 or 18-year-old kid coming there and go, oh, yeah, Freddie's dead, man. That's my jam, you know. And God, it thrills me. And it's not even my song. It just thrills me because I admire your work so much.
Well, there's been some 60, 70 different rap artists, and of course the different contemporary artists who are still about my music, whether it be through sample or through just doing a song. And I'm very appreciative of that and flattered.
Going back to the Impressions, year was 1958. You came with your first song, For Your Precious Love. It was a smash instantly. I mean, within a couple of weeks, it was a major hit. At that point, did you know that you guys were going to be as major artists as you became?
I had no idea, but one must keep his dreams. And you have it in your head where you want to go, and you dream about what you want to be about. And preparation is the important thing. You prepare for tomorrow, and I'll be darned if you're not living it in a matter of years. So it's very important to keep your dreams.
Now, in '58, I was also told that you were very surprised when the record came out because it was actually printed on the label as Jerry Butler and the Impressions.
Well, yes, we were a 5-man group as the Impressions. Jerry, of course, was one of us, and it sort of diluted our feelings as a group to find that the label, not Jerry, but the label had put his name out as the lead singer simply because of the DJs and all that played it would say, here's Jerry Butler. And the fans, of course, thought the Impressions were just a band. And so it brought about, when we were all woodshedding equally, it brought about a few hard feelings, especially when we got that big sack of mail through the post office and it all said to Jerry Butler. However, it wasn't Jerry. It was known back during those years that the lead singers were pulled out. You got the Frankie Lymans, the Clyde McFadders, and many of the artists back then, they would bring out the lead singer in the hopes of crossovers. However, in many ways, it was a blessing in disguise because Jerry moved on as a single artist, and it allowed me, thank God for the technology, because I was always quiet with my way of singing, but I began to write my songs, and our first happening for the Impressions was Gypsy Woman, whereas I was the lead singer.
What was that, 61?
I believe so.
Yeah. A great song, and it's, now how does this make you feel, though, when you still hear songs like that on the radio? I heard that song 3 days ago on the radio.
I feel great, man. I mean, the idea that the music and its lyrical contents has lent to longevity over all of these years make me quite proud even of myself.
I love you, gypsy woman.
Well, Jerry Butler left the Impressions shortly after For Your Precious Love, right?
Yes, he moved on in '59, actually.
Oh, that same year?
Yes.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, the following year, because
Yes.
Your Precious Love was released in '58.
That's right.
Okay, so Jerry moved on in '59, and then there was a quiet period for you guys.
Well, that's true. No one knew the Impressions after Jerry moved on. And Jerry was nice enough to hire me as his guitarist. And of course, with Jerry, I not only played behind him, but I also began to write songs like He'll Break Your Heart and I'm A-Telling You and things of that sort, where I would sing even harmonies with Jerry. So it didn't matter where I was. Looked like the music was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
This allowed me to save up $1,000 of making $15 a night. And I brought the Impressions back in 1960, 61, whereas we went to New York, signed with ABC Paramount, and here we come with Gypsy Woman, whereas I was still playing for Jerry, but we had a fellow by the name of Eddie Thomas, and he was a natural promo man. And I mean, everywhere we went as Jerry Butler performing, he drove for Jerry. Every morning we were up in wherever he saw an antenna, we were at the station. He later found himself to become the first black national promotion man.
Oh, really? For what
Yes,
company?
for ABC Paramount. And of course, this is what helped to launch Gypsy Woman for the Impressions. And after that began to happen, I moved on from Jerry and joined my group again. Of course, then we went on to do such things as Keep On Pushing and I'm So Proud and songs of that sort, Choice of Colors, and there was no stopping us then.
You guys were huge at that point, but during that 2-year period when you were playing guitar for Jerry, trying to save money to get the Impressions back together, well, you've said earlier about holding on to your dreams. That can be difficult sometimes. Did you ever think during that time that maybe this dream won't happen, that the Impressions won't be?
I had no doubts that somewhere down the way I would actually, it was foresight. Your dreams also, you look at them as foresight. You don't know when, but just don't give up.
Well, that's a good point. Now, the songs that you mentioned, Keep On Pushing, Amen, all these mega hits for the Impressions, were all these your babies?
Most of them, yes. I'd say 99.9% were my songs.
Now, you're talking about how you were always, songs would just come. I mean, out of conversations, out of whatever it was that you were into at that point, a song would just come. Was it like that for a long period of time, or would it just come and go?
It was always like that. I allotted myself sensitivities. And of course, it didn't all have to happen to me. But whatever your problems or your hardships or your love or her love or my feelings or our insecurities or the current events. And of course, we were happening during the time of struggle for black people, trying to bring about equality with the Reverend Martin Luther King and so many others. So I had many things to write about and feel about.
Did you know Dr. King?
I never had the pleasure, but of course, as so many others, I personally felt I knew him.
What were your feelings the day that he was assassinated?
Terrible. It was as though I'd been hit myself. I just didn't die. I was here to see all the happenings, like so many others.
His words and your words with your music were so inspirational for so many people. You know, I've often heard people talk about James Brown and say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, and that was very significant, obviously. You know, I was a child growing up during that period, and I know what it meant to me. It was the first time that I had ever heard that and felt that, and it was
Yes.
so much more than a song. It gave me something that has lasted me a lifetime. But there were also words of hope and promise, of pushing on through a struggle, and those words came from you. You know, like Keep On Pushing, or We're a Winner was such a significant song to me. Did you know the power of the medium that you were dealing with that time, that you were shaping lives and attitudes, young lives like mine?
Of course, I had no idea. I was only a youngster, such as yourself. But something pushed me to do it. Many of the songs, such as We're a Winner, created controversy when it came to trying to get it played over what was considered R&B radio. And the idea of possibly getting a crossover was out of sight, out of mind, you know. It didn't matter, though, because the words, and it locked in so much with the movement. And I was a black youngster myself. It was another way of presenting my own personal pride and keeping my own self-esteem going in spite of the hardships and the surrounding current events.
I look at that era and the music that you wrote in particular, and I think about things that I hear now. And I'm curious to know what you feel about some of the music that you hear today. I think that the medium has not changed, that music is just as powerful as it always was, but the message has changed, and it scares me sometimes that such a powerful medium is being used in the way that it's used nowadays. And I'm really curious to know what you feel about, and I don't really want to single out any particular kind of music, or I don't want to just say rap or gangster rap. I think that's been talked about so much. But just in general, sexual content of lyrics, and some of the violence that you hear in some of the music today.
Well, if I could have anything to say in reference of the music today, I'm still a believer that everything has a place. There's a time for love, there's a time for hardships, there's a time to look about yourself and take inventory. And the subjects, they can and should be many. It is important to me that if you're to say anything at all, let it be of some value. While you shake your shaggy, let's lend food for thought. Mm-hmm. And I think many are afraid that if they don't lock right in on what the fad is, that they can't make money. Money, of course, is important, but the money can still be made with the pride and uplifting of one's self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever chase crossover?
Not really. My music was just too important to me. Mm-hmm. Many of my songs, I just didn't care whether it became a hit or not. I was so pleased with it. However, it is important that you must walk that tight line of your own personal creativities and to be commercial, of course.
Yeah. But you know, I think that a lot of artists feel that they have to make a pop record in order to have pop success. And that really isn't the case, is it?
Well, that's the pressure, because most of your investors and people who are really putting up the front money, many of them aren't about music, they're about the dollar. And the pressure is the fad and keep up with whoever's got the hit. Everybody jump on it, you know? And it takes it takes a little courage to still say and sort of lend your own way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. You know, that word courage, is a word that I think of a lot when I think of you. Um, because of the day and the types of songs that you made. But you know, one particular song really comes to mind, and that's If There's a Hell Below. I mean, when you open up, niggas, Jews, crackers, whitey. I'm like, whoa, this man has a lot of courage. I mean, were you at all afraid of opening a song like that, and how it would be accepted?
No, it just made so much sense. The hook line, if there's a hell below, I'll see you when you get there.
That's right. Superfly, that was the first movie you scored, right?
Yes.
How did that come about?
I was working at the Lincoln Center in New York when Philip Fenty, the screenwriter, and Seg Shore, the producer, came to my show. Philip already had me in mind, and after the first show, they decided to come meet me, and they brought the script, Superfly. Of course, it wiped me out, being a creative person to, after having done productions and writing songs, and now to maybe be involved with a movie. Mm-hmm. I was ready, you know. So it was just the most fantastic thing that could happen in my life. And I went home after that particular show. I think I'd already written 2 or 3 songs, you know, just through the script and the characters and being sensitive to all things that were written. It dictates to you almost what should be.
I remember you using the word bitch in one of your songs, but the way you used it, and it was on Superfly. It was in the song Pusher Man.
Yeah.
And I remember that song being controversial because a lot of people thought that you were glorifying this whole Pusher Man scene, you know, and I can understand how they may feel that way if they didn't listen to the whole song. But the key to that song for me was the last verse, and I think it was one of the all-time classic verses in music for me, because he says, got a woman I love desperately, want to give us something better than me. You know, that shows so much insight. It's saying, like, yes, I'm a pusher man, but this is not what I want to be.
It didn't have to be
It didn't
what
have
he,
to be.
yeah. And as we defined this particular pusher man, it wasn't to glorify, but it was to express your own personal sensitivities through the hassles you were going through. And like you say, I know I've been told I can't do nothing else. I'm just a hustler in spite of myself.
You know, I really didn't get to that verse until much later. I mean, it's probably 20 years after the song was out, and it hit me so hard the day I listened to it. It's like, you know what it said to me? It said that Curtis understands, you know, that, sure, this guy is a pusher man. It showed a certain amount of sensitivity about you, that this guy's a pusher man, but there's a set of circumstances that put him there. He didn't come here like that, you know, and you understand that.
Whiteys, Jews, crackers.
So much of your stuff is, shows so much social consciousness. It's just, whenever we listen to your music, Curtis, we're always aware of the fact that you knew what was going on. You never lost touch.
I think we all do. You know, there's just some who are gifted, and of course, we all take our places in hopes to make real contributions as individuals. And I found myself to be one to be able to speak well, or at least sing my lyrics and interpret our thoughts, basically and selfishly through myself, because many of my songs were for me first. I come out of the first year high school, about 14 years old. I was a youngster. I was an adolescent, wondering what was I to do in life as well. It's just fortunately that I had my music, and I had a decent upbringing in spite of us being poor, but we were all poor, you know? And being able to observe, and when you just take that conversation a little bit more in depth, you begin to feel me, I begin to feel you. We find that we have the same fears, we shed similar tears, and we die in so many years.
Very well put. I mean, to sit here talking to you now, I think, God, this man is so wise, but the amazing thing to me is that I would have said the same thing sitting here talking to you at 18 years old. You know, where does that kind of wisdom come from?
If it's wisdom at all, we are all wise enough, hopefully, or we become wise enough to find we don't know nothing. And when you can keep yourself down to earth, where you can respect the food as well as the biggest king or queen, you set a platform as to where maybe you might survive in this world, simply because you don't know who's going to come up to save you. And you keep yourself down to earth in spite of wherever you go. And everybody is your salvation.
In 1990, obviously, it was a very tragic thing for you or anyone else to go through because of this attitude that you just expressed to me. Did that make it, to make you better able to endure it and to understand it?
Well, that was a bad decision when I decided to go on early rather than close the show, I suppose. However, it was a fate itself, and had I not gone up there, someone else might have been injured or even killed. And things like that, you just can't, you can't change. And I'm just still happy to have been around where I can still see the wave and respect and the love. Lots of people pray for me. And I think that's what's keeping me surviving today.
But did you go through a period, Curtis, right after this happened? I mean, where you wonder why me?
Not yet. I've been waiting for that.
Really?
I've never asked the question why me. I've never felt like it should have been anybody else. I'm one to just accept my fate, and it's important for me to keep my spirits high. Doesn't mean that I don't have a tear in my eye every once in a while, and you wake up and you find that you who have been so independent all of your life find yourself to be totally dependent. But I wouldn't ask this to happen to anyone else rather than me. It just happened.
Yeah. For those that are watching that may not know, it was on a stage in Brooklyn. You were getting ready to perform.
That's
and
true.
Some of the scaffolding fell.
Yes, from what I understand, all of it fell. And who's to blame, more or less? I mean, of course, we have our litigations and things of that sort.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I was talking to someone about it, and they were saying, I don't know that I could go on behind that, to have to be dependent on other people. And my immediate thought was, yeah, but if you didn't, look at how much you would have missed. I mean, I look at what has happened to you over the last 8 or 9 months in particular, with the tributes to you, with the Legends Award or the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammys. And so these are very special things that has happened to Curtis.
You're only one fellow's girl, and I'm so proud, I'm so have a train a coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on
this may be difficult, I know, because a lot of things have happened to you during your career, but the top 3 highlights.
Well, I guess there's no doubt in mind that Superfly was one of them. But there's been so many. I mean, Let's Do It Again. But of course, we can go back to day one. Being a part of the Impressions was one of my greatest highlights. I was raised with those gentlemen. I was only 14. Everybody was older, and they were good people, and they kept not only their eyes, but my eyes on the prize. And it made it easy. You know, you don't do anything alone. And to have had so many good people in a business that one easily can look down upon is a blessing.
Are you still in contact with all the guys?
Oh, yes, and they're still working, still singing those songs. They were working here in Atlanta just this past Memorial Day. They're doing very well.
I guess that's another testimony to the work that you and the Impressions did so well, that all these years later, without benefit of a current hit, they still work.
That's right, singing the same songs, and they still getting over.
Do you miss being able to perform?
Oh, yeah. It was my life. It was basically all of my life other than my family. And for such a long time, that's all I've ever done. So not to be able to perform or make my own statements and do my own little thing on stage does hurt sometimes, you know. And I suppose I am still brooding over not being able to play my guitar. My guitar, I always played differently. When I picked up the guitar, when I strummed across it, it seemed as though it was out of tune, even though I found out later that it was probably properly tuned in the key of Spanish. Well, I tuned it subconsciously once again to all the black keys on the piano, which was F sharp, and that's what I used to plunk on and play on when I was a baby. And of course, I kept that tuning. And what used to wipe me out, no matter how good you were with your axe, you couldn't pick up mine and play it.
Are you still able to write at all?
I haven't been writing. That's my only hardship, probably, since my accident. I hope maybe somewhere in the near future that I might find a way to create new compositions.
Is it that you feel that you can't? I'd read in an article that the most frustrating thing for you was that the music still comes.
Oh, yeah, but this music and ideas and thoughts, you know, are like dreams. If you don't immediately get to the paper or jot it down or sing the song, especially as you get older, you lose it, it fades away. And of course, being immobile, it's easier said than done to have to try and arise out of bed, call someone else in with a pad, find the tape recorder, get things going, and keep the idea that you may have had a half an hour ago.
I can only imagine how frustrating that would be.
Yes.
But for all of our sake, I hope that you do find a way to write again.
Thank you very much.
You wrote some things that obviously have lasted, that have withstood the test of time, that have meant a lot to a lot of people, that have created a standard for others in the business and created a very positive attitude for a lot of our people. And I, for one, really appreciate that. And thank you for it.
Thank you, Donnie.
And I thank you for today, too, Curtis. I mean, to invite us into your home again. This is something that I've been really looking forward to. I love you. I love your music. I wish the best for you and your family. And again, I thank you for inviting us here on this special day, your birthday. The flowers in the background, by the way, are from his lovely wife, Althea. And to invite us on your 52nd birthday makes us feel even more special.
Well, thank you so very much.
Thanks for having us. Curtis Mayfield. I'm Donnie Simpson. Thanks for tuning in.